Citizens of Earth, lend me your ears. Another week has passed us by, and another Buffalo Bills win has come along with it. A win that I finally got to see in person. Yes, friends, it took 6 tries, but I finally was able to watch the Buffalo Bills win in person after 5 agonizingly painful defeats. I stand victorious. It's just as much a win for me as it is for all of you. But that win has happened, and we are going to briefly recap that, but more so talk about this upcoming Sunday's very intense, very exciting, and really potentially very impactful divisional matchup with the New England Patriots. We'll go over offense, defense, and special teams and point out the biggest stats and matchups that we are looking out for in this upcoming game. I'm excited. My guest tonight is excited. I hope you are all excited, and I want to thank each and every single one of you for tuning in to this week's episode of Under Review. And without further ado, I will stop talking and I'll let that intro play. Let's go.
Previous play will go under review.
And a happy Friday evening to each and every single one of you. And thank you so much again for tuning in to this week's episode of Under Review. Whether you are watching live on YouTube, Facebook, X, or Twitch, the other one. Sorry, almost said Twitter for some reason. Probably because it used to be Twitter. Whether you watching us live or whether you are listening to us on your audio platforms, I appreciate the heck out of you. Again, this show has not been going live very often lately, but this was an exception. Decided to do Friday this week. May or may not have everything to do with both work schedule and maybe some playoff games, but that's besides the point. We won't talk about baseball right now. Go Yankees. We're going to talk about football, and we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills. Yes, friends, another victory for the team this past Sunday as they took down the Saints to the tune of 31-19. One of your trademark Buffalo Bills ugly wins where they still win by double digits, yet it didn't feel as comfortable as it may have looked on the scoreboard. One of those games where if you were not watching and you were an out-of-town fan and happened to see the score, you'd be like, oh, they're cruising. But meanwhile, all of us were probably pulling our hair out at several points in that game. Well, they still got the win. They finished September perfectly, and we move on to another big game against the New England Patriots. And when I say we, I never just mean me, folks. I always have a guest on the show, and really, by always, I mean like 95% of the time. And you see the hat I'm wearing? Well, I got this at the Bills store. I could not be at the Bills store if it wasn't for my guest tonight, who was generously able to provide me, I reached out to him about it, tickets for this past Sunday's game. He is the reason that I was able to see my first ever Bills win in person. And that man is the one and only Mr. Adam Penso. Adam, you have not been on the show in a while. We've tried to make it work. We finally got it tonight, and I appreciate the heck out of you for lending me your time on a Friday night. Thank you again for everything. How are you doing tonight, my friend? How's everything?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Joe. I'm glad that you had a good time. I was really happy to, this is my first season with season tickets. My wife and I have been on the wait list for, a long time. And I was surprised even that we got the call or the email for this season. And so, anytime that we can help out somebody that we know get to the game, that's what we like to do. And it's even more special that you get to finally, how many years had it been? Like, 5 games, but how many years?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just a loaded question. I am not from Buffalo, as I've said on Twitter. I grew up in Poughkeepsie, so I live 6 hours away from Buffalo, but I became a Bills fan later in life. When I first started going to games, my very first game ever was in 2015, Bills Giants, with my father, who is a Giants fan. I come from a family of Giants fans. Please do not yell at me. From that game, I went to, after that, the Patriots game that same year in Gillette. A few years had passed. I went to the Jets game in MetLife in 2017. A few years had passed. I went to the Colts game in 2021. A year had passed, and I went to the Jets game in 2022. I had been to 5 games They lost every single one of them, but the caveat to each loss was something cool happened in every single one that I at least hung my hat on a little bit. In the case of the Giants game, it was like Mario Williams suplexing, I think it was Rashad Jennings. The Patriot game, I wasn't far away from where Brady was, so I saw him slam his helmet and yell at his O-line. That was fun. For the Colts game, it was a scoregami. The Jets game, besides the point, I'm coping so hard and I'm getting off track. So this was the 6th try. And that first half, Adam, I'm not going to lie to you. I was like, there is no freaking way they're going to do this again while I'm here. They can't. It's impossible. I want to thank Cole Bishop for making that pick because once I saw that, I was like, I think we might have this in the bag, but I'm not sure. Dude, it took a long time to get here. It took a long time to get to this conversation. I am so grateful for you, and I'm grateful for the Bills for finally not letting me down in a game in person. So yes, that is the backstory.
I feel like every game you listed off, I felt like I got hit with an additional brick in the face. You know, like especially that Indy game, like, oh my God, you're like, okay, maybe this will finally be the time I see win. And instead you get one of the worst performances in the Sean McDermott era of the Buffalo Bills.
Carson Wentz.
Oh man.
Dude, and the thing about it was like going into that game, I was so hopeful because they just came off that big win against the Jets. And I was like, okay, cool. Like this team's cruising now. The passing offense looked great. And just Jonathan Taylor, 200 yards. Like, again, the only highlight of that game was it was a scoregami. So I could say I was at a scoregami game, which is probably like really difficult to pull off. But again, it was a birthday gift. I'm still thankful to my wonderful girlfriend for getting me that gift. The game was less than ideal, and it was also raining. And the final thing I'll say about this, Adam, was I actually posted about this in Reddit like a couple of years ago saying, hey, guys, this was after the Jets loss. I'm 0-5. I don't know what to do anymore. And someone, I don't know who this was, maybe they're watching this show, but the reply was simply, I think you should see a priest. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I need to. So shout out to all of you. But again, thank you. That was awesome to see in person. And before we get on to this Patriots matchup, just your final thoughts, putting the bow on the Saints matchup. Obviously, we got to move on. It's an NFC game. This one weighs a lot more. But I mean, what were really just your big takeaways from that game in general, as far as team performance or anything that you took note of, both good or bad?
Well, it was a nice win. You know, I mean, I hate to parrot the same things that you hear from the team on the field, but I believe in it, you know, and that is that any win in the NFL is a good win. You know, sometimes I feel like we've taken for granted just how difficult it really is to win in this league and how many little things you need to do well in order to, you know, win at the rate that the Bills have won. How many games in a row have they won at home now at this point, right? I mean, are they up at, is it 18 regular season games or, you know, I mean, that's incredible. And, you know, expectations get set by the media. They get set by spreads, you know, because everyone's trying to quantify how good a team is. And honestly, you know, if the Bills and Saints played that game, you know, 10 times, I bet the Bills cover probably in 5 or more of them. You know, there were some extenuating circumstances and you know, the first few games of the season, really the first half of the season, every team is still trying to figure out who they are, what they do well. They're trying to understand their new players and leverage their strengths. And, you know, it was on my drive over here to my office, where I'm coming to you live from, I was thinking kind of about some of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight, including this, you know, the concern, you know, because everyone's wanting the Bills to look like the Super Bowl favorite every game in, game out right now, immediately, you know, week 4, week 5 into the season. And, you know, what I thought about was and I retweeted this, or I put a tweet out before the show, the AJ Klein breakout game. Do you remember that? This against the Seahawks in 2020?
Yep. Yes, I do.
AJ Klein had been dogged by Bills Mafia week after week after week. And, you know, really fans didn't like seeing him on the field. He was getting beaten coverage. It was really, you know, it was not working out well. And, you know, fans were picking up on it. And then all of a sudden, they have this week 9 game against the Seattle Seahawks. And AJ Klein goes off. And he is running through the line of scrimmage, you know, TFLs, all over the place. And, you know, realistically, like, there's nothing really changed that much with AJ Klein from week 1 to week 9 in terms of his personal performance. What it was the Bills learning how to deploy the player from within their scheme that made him an effective player. And, you know, oftentimes this is going to be the case. You know, this is going to be the first 9 weeks. And what makes this even more interesting is the fact that, some of the main guys that they were counting on, being available week 1, 2 of them are out in suspension that we're going to get back. We've got Maxwell Harrison, who's, still on the IR. So, there are going to be, not only are we still trying to figure out what we have, but there's going to be reinforcements that they still have to ingratiate into this roster. So, as a whole, I was happy with the win. I was happy with a lot of things about the performance. And the only other thing I will say, other than kind of giving them a pass for it being early in the season, is that the Saints defense, they are one of the better teams in terms of havoc rate on defense and havoc score. It's one of the metrics that I put together to kind of track how much chaos a defense creates. And believe it or not, the Saints are, I think it was 7th or 8th overall. They're up there. So they pose, all sorts of challenges on the defensive side of the ball. So, if the offense didn't feel great at times, it's a combination of things. We're still figuring it out. And, that was a good team.
Yeah, I completely agree on really anything coming to the Saints as far as being a competitive team. And when you watched their games leading into this past matchup, you never saw a team that was this god-awful atrocity on the field, like as advertised with their record. What you saw was a team that remained competitive in every single game they played against, I would argue, 2 stingy opponents, not top flight, but guys that I think were kind of on their level, and they played one-score tight games and just couldn't close. And then you get to the Seattle game, and the Seattle game is just, again, very quick special teams miscues that led to the game getting out of hand before they ever really could take their breath. And I think that says a lot, because when they came into this Buffalo game, when you come off a loss like that, you kind of hear the old cliche, they're motivated, but they really were. And that was a team playing with its hair on fire for most of that game. I mean, the first half, that Saints team didn't look like they were 0-3. They looked like a real viable competitor. They were a team that the special teams even tightened things up for pretty much most of the game up until the end. The defense was flying and causing some havoc. They were mixing coverages. The pass rush was hitting home. RVD and Torrance, they isolated them a bit, so they tried to create some disruption on that side, and it really did work for some time. And it was what you kind of expected from a team that, again, when you're 0-3 and you have nothing to lose, you're dangerous. And that's why, I kind of titled the episode last week that, because I figured that's what the matchup would look like. And so be it, they do. But I still think that to walk away from this with, again, maybe just like this idea that there's so much to clean up while you still won the game by 10 points or 11 points, that says a lot about the team. And I think what we have to get used to is the idea that not every win, because I know that plenty of people do understand this, but I feel like it still gets lost in the conversation because in-game reactions are very, emotionally driven. It's taking logic out the window and it's just putting in like how you're feeling right then and there. We have to remember that getting the win is the only thing that matters, but also these aren't like 3-point wins or it didn't come down to a walk-off field goal. Like they're still decisively winning these games. And even if maybe they give up some extra yardage towards the end of a game, maybe their defense doesn't look as stout as it should, which is a valid concern. I'm not denying that. Yep. Plenty of good, talented teams, championship teams win games this way too. I was thinking about it today, Adam, but like I thought about the last time that we saw Brady in Buffalo, and I believe it was 2019. That game was a one-score game that came down to the fourth quarter where the Bills offense just couldn't get anything going and they came off the field. Yep. That was a team that, again, that year they didn't win a Super Bowl, but they were a contending team because they always were. It was the Patriots. And it just made me realize, like, in so many instances, these teams just find ways to get it done. And ultimately, whatever the spread is, whatever the point margin is at the end of the game, it doesn't matter. They still win it. And I think what we're seeing right now is a Bills team that doesn't need to pull out all the stops in every single game. They win in very unsexy ways, to just put it bluntly. And it's led to a 4-0 month. And I feel like you walk into this year after last season, and, if you didn't tell me how they did it, you just said, hey, this is their roster and this is their record after September, you'd sign up for it every single time. And I understand a lot of the discourse stems from, well, I'm thinking about the playoffs and I'm thinking about Kansas City and I'm thinking about what it looks like then. But this team's not going to be the same team in that month because it doesn't work that way. These teams are constantly piecing it together each week and going back to the tape, and things like gap integrity improve over the year. Things like, again, assignments and being able to not react in the wrong ways to certain run concepts, that can improve over a year. And of course, you brought it up, reinforcements that can also improve during the year, and it will, because they're going to get bodies back starting this Sunday, where potentially Matt Milano returns, Spencer Brown's back in the lineup, maybe Ed Oliver, we'll see. And down the road, Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi, Max Hairston. Like, we got to remember that this defense is a bit of a shell of itself right now. Not fully. There's still talent there. I'm not trying to discredit the talented players, but there's more coming here. And I think once you get those key pieces that they were hanging their hats on, you are going to see improvement in several metrics. And I think that can start this Sunday. Again, if you see a guy like Milano and Brown come back into the fold for both sides of the ball. So I love those points, Adam. Anything else you want to add before we move on to the beginning part of this matchup preview?
No, I think we, I think we primarily covered it. Let's dive into the Pats.
For sure. Real fast, David Stearman, thank you so much for joining us on Facebook. And I see, do you think Ed Oliver will be back this Sunday as well as Matt Milano? I think Milano will be. Again, practice, he's just looked healthy. I think Ed, they might wait another week. That's just my guess, given that Ed, based off some of the accounts I follow, who are much more equipped for this type of conversation than I am as far as evaluation, they have kind of noticed a bit of a gimpiness in Ed's step. It's improved, but maybe waiting one more week is more ideal to get a fully effective version of him. But it wouldn't shock me if he does play and it's just on a snap count and they just go with guys like Deion Walker, maybe TJ if he's healthy, and Jordan Phillips, and maybe they'll bring back Zion Logue. I don't know what their plan is, but I think if they waited another week for Ed, it wouldn't shock me, and I would kind of be all for it. But going to this Patriots matchup, Adam. So I just crunched the numbers a bit, and I'm just comparing their defense to our offense. So right now, the Buffalo Bills, after this first month, are sitting first in EPA per play, 0.18, fifth in passing EPA per play, and first in rushing EPA per play. This is all per next gen stats. The Pats defense is currently 22nd in EPA per play, but here's the caveat: 26th in passing EPA with a plus 0.10. But they're fourth in rushing EPA allowed, a negative 0.18. So they are a stingy rushing defense. And what we've seen from their injury reports this week is guys like Milton Williams and Caleb Von Chasen just kind of appearing, and it seemed like their prognosis was going to be that they might miss this week, but Milton Williams comes back to a limited capacity. And now what we're seeing is maybe the potential for their interior line to be healthy, and I think that would pose challenges. I'm very interested to hear, Adam, what you have to say about this matchup. I mean, what are you looking out for? What are the biggest things that you say fans should keep their eye on that might be really the biggest difference in how the Bills can execute both on the ground and in the air against the Patriots?
Yeah, well, let's talk big picture first, right? So when I look at the Patriots right now in their current form, they remind me a lot of the Bills from 2019. Let's just start with Drake May. He looks like he's going to be good, man. Everything that I've seen on him, everyone's talking about his numbers this year, but even last year, a lot of the analytics that you'd read on May, painted a very positive picture, and that was behind pretty poor offensive line and, not a lot of options in the, in terms of pass targets, reliable pass targets. And, they're in that process of rebuilding this team in a way that they can become more formidable. And the thing about the Patriots as they're built right now is that they're not, no team's perfect, right? But they're built to only win in very specific ways. And that's very common when you see teams at this stage of a rebuild where they focus on, building to certain strengths, especially as part of quarterback development. We saw this with the Bills with Josh Allen. The priority when he was a younger player, on his rookie deal, was building out the wide receiver core, getting him some reasonable protection. That offensive line in 2020 was, one of the best lines they had during, his tenure with the Bills so far. Getting him a wide range of receivers to help bring him along. And I feel like the Pats have sort of followed that playbook a little bit. Obviously, I mean, they right down to the idea of bringing in Stephon Diggs, like the Bills did, a guy who maybe isn't a true wide receiver one type guy anymore, but he can still do all the little things that you need him to get open in tight spaces and whatnot, and make it a little bit easier on a younger quarterback still developing to make the throws that he needs to throw. So, conceptually, there is only a few paths to the Patriots beating the Bills in this game. But what makes it interesting is the fact that, as you just said, it is strength on strength. The Bills are primarily built, first and foremost, as we know, to run the football. And the Patriots defense has been good at stopping the run. Conversely, the Patriots offense has not been good at running the football. Bills defense, not so good at stopping the run, at least through the start. But the Bills defense has been good against the pass, and the Patriots look very, very good, throwing the ball. So it's going to be a strength on strength battle to start the game. The difference is really going to be if the Bills can flex, their ability and keep the run going, or even if the Patriots get up early on the Bills, I don't think they're going to have a lot of success bleeding clock by, hitting the ball across the ground, which will give the Bills opportunities to come back in the game if they don't have, the start that they need. So,
yeah,
only a few paths really to the Patriots winning this game, but they're there.
I feel like I do this every year on the show, Adam, where I kind of say don't sleep on the Patriots, but I feel like this year is the one where it really reigns true for my time at Cover One, because I agree with you on really everything you said. But the biggest thing I want to highlight before we get back into the matchup conversation more specifically is just Drake May. Yeah, I felt very strongly that I wanted him to never be in New England, and I was really hoping that they would thwart their chances because I figured this was going to be the trajectory. I loved him as a prospect, and here he is, and he's doing incredibly well for them. And it isn't just like kind of that frantic, what you'd expect a year two player to do, where it's like, yeah, there's some flashes, but they're still really inconsistent, and they're still not really taking advantage of things. No, like, Drake May, from an EPA standpoint, is one of the highest rated quarterbacks in the NFL. His third down numbers are the best in the NFL. And he's doing this in spite of, I would argue a receiving core that, while it's talented, isn't top 5 in the NFL. An offensive line, while it has some pieces, isn't top 5 in the NFL. A running game that has yet to truly establish itself, despite drafting a very talented rookie and having an established veteran. This is Drake May and Josh McDaniels, who deserves a lot of credit too, because he's been very, very good at getting the most out of his quarterbacks as an OC, especially young ones. This is them playing at a high level and executing at a high level. And I understand the schedule has been a bit weak for them, but this is still a really talented passing offense because of a very talented quarterback playing well above his means in year two. And I think this is just the start of a very successful and extremely annoying career for Buffalo Bills fans. But listen, competition's fun. I know we want to cruise to victory every year, but it's good for the game, and I could support that. And there's nothing to not like about Drake May as a person. And I could say that he's an extremely talented quarterback, and we'll have our hands full because, again, I think he's seeing the field really well. I understand that when there's pressure, his pressure to sack rate isn't great. I believe he's leading the league right now in 13 sacks taken, but clean pockets for Drake May. The processing is there. The layered throws are there. He's been mostly accurate, a couple high throws, but he's still putting the ball where it needs to go. And Josh McDaniels is doing a great job of setting him up for success, similar to kind of what I talked about last week with Kellen Moore and Spencer Rattler. This year, McDaniel is doing a great job of giving him really good first reads to take advantage of. But don't get it twisted. Even if Drake May's numbers aren't there yet for being top flight in the NFL of getting through his progressions, he can. And he has the throwing ability to really hurt you all over the field. So this is just an offense that I think right now hasn't played their best ball, but you're seeing, again, some of the viability in their passing attack. But when we talk about this Bills offense relative to the Patriots defense and really just how the Bills can attack it, I agree with you, Adam. I mean, it's a test. It's a defense that's been stingy, but I do think their passing defense is where you can exploit them. But what I will say is I feel like this Buffalo Bills rushing offense is good enough to take the ball down on anybody. Like, they just are. And they've proven it time and time again. I mean, last year in the playoffs, I've cited this before, even in the Kansas City game with a really good front, they were still able to move the ball on the ground. I think that this Patriots team has, done a really nice job so far in mitigating rushing attacks. I think game script has had something to do with it. And I do think some teams have been able to get their punches off, like the Miami Dolphins, who did have a few explosive runs in their game. I think that this is probably their biggest test on the ground for a rushing offense. And I think the Bills are still going to have success, mainly if they could try to keep, I would say, their rushes towards the edges. They're going to run all over. Don't get me wrong. It's not like they're going to avoid the interior in general, but I do think that they've had some trouble fully containing runs to the perimeter. And I think especially if Jason is gone, you probably try to exploit that matchup by going outside of your tackles a bit more often. And I think James Cook is just explosive enough to always be a threat in that regard. So that's where I'd like to see them attack. But again, if it has to be through the air, I feel very comfortable with this. Again, it's no disrespect to some of the members of the secondary. And believe me, there are talented pieces in the secondary. Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah, Christian Gonzalez
is
the same thing.
An unbelievable talent. I'm not talking like a guy that you'll say is like in the top 15. Like this is top 5 corner potential. He just has to stay healthy. But if he does, we're seeing one of the best corners in the game. He's ramping up. And I think that is exploitable, but each week is another week where he gets more play under his belt and gets better and better. And I find that even with their passing metrics right now, he's the type of corner you want to avoid throwing to because he is just so good in man coverage and just plays people so well. No matter the type of receiver you are, he can hang with you. He's manned up Tyreek Hill on go routes. Like that's how good this kid is. And I think he's a pain point for this Bills offense. So I think what they really have to do is try to exploit the safeties. I think motion, misdirection, and trying to get people to tackle from depth and exploiting yak opportunities with some safeties who might not be as composed when it comes from taking proper angles or maybe being able to read the open field well or make an open field tackle. I think that's where you can have some success. It still kind of makes me wonder why they got rid of Jabril Peppers, considering the current state of their safety room. But again, it's a defense that has a lot of talent. I think the Bills are going to go up tempo. I think the Bills are going to try and get the ball out quickly. I think they're going to try and mitigate this passing attack, especially considering, or pass rush, I should say, especially considering who sits there on that interior defensive line. Because again, Christian Barmore is an exceptional interior defensive lineman. He's healthy this year. Milton freaking Williams. I mean, Aaron cited the stat in our chat as we were messing with Greg, where he mentioned that him and Chasen are accounting for just about 40% of their total pressures. I love Milton Williams as a player. I wanted him on the Bills. He's on the Patriots. And I think that their interior pressure is unrelenting. And again, while they have faced worse offensive lines, that does not mean I am going to discount what they have done. I respect the hell out of what they are able to provide. I think they're going to give them fits. It is very imperative that the ball gets out of Josh Allen's hands quickly, unless you can dress up some play action. Again, get him to hold the ball, get a deeper drop, deeper pocket, and see the field a little more cleanly. Because I think extended plays are where they can win too. But yeah, I mean, I'm really pumped to watch this. You know, the whole unstoppable force meets unmovable object argument when you talk about a really good rushing attack versus a really good rushing defense. Who wins? But I do think the Bills are going to get the better of them when you talk about the context of the whole game, because I just don't think, considering the style of football they play, Adam, I feel like it's just wear and tear, ground and pound, trying to tire you out. And I just don't think there is a defensive line that has enough bodies to withstand that, especially if they have to stay on the field, and especially if these aren't more athletic guys that are typically upfield guys, but rather your conventional run stuff or big bodies that might lose stamina a little quickly. So any other thoughts, anything you want to bring up while we are on this topic?
Well, you know, you mentioned Christian Barmore. One of the things that I looked at was the DT pass rush effectiveness chart. And usually when I like to, you know, kind of scout how well the defensive line is registering pressure, I like to filter out the blitzes. You know, a lot of times I feel like that's a forgotten aspect of, you know, looking at pressures. You know, I want to see how a team is performing in a standard rush. And Christian Barmore is 17th, according to Next Gen Stats, in pressure rate at 16.7%. That will make him the third best pass rusher, at least, you know, the pass rusher with the third highest pressure rate that the Bills have faced this season. You know, Matabuke is 11th, and Will McDonald's actually 15th. So, you know, there's, you know, behind him, Keon White, the defensive end, 27th, you know. So they seem to, even though they, you know, are not looking so hot against the pass, they seem to be having some success, at least in getting some pressure on the quarterback. So, you know, talking about the quick game like you did, I definitely think that'll be a big part of it, which, you know, I look forward to after the game hearing all about why the Bills didn't, you know, push the ball downfield again. But, you know,
they did in the last game, by the way, as you know.
Right, exactly. But you know, when you're facing teams that have, you know, certain strengths, you're trying to develop a game plan around neutralizing them, and you know that's one of the ways that that you can do that. You know, on the flip side, while I had the stat open, by the way, Joey Bosa 8th in pressure rate through Next Gen Stats, 20%. 1 in every 5 snaps that he plays without the blitz, he's registering a pressure, and his get off is one of the quickest in the league as well. His, the way Next Gen Stats measures it, 0.88 seconds. So, I mean, he is, I know that, he's leaving some to be desired in the, in the ground game and on the run and, wrapping up quarterbacks the right way and kind of picking, choosing where he's kind of positioning himself. But man, from a pure pass rush standpoint, I feel like, especially when Ed Oliver gets back, fans are really going to warm up to what this guy is doing on the field to compress the pocket.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Joey Bosa, the pass rusher. Obviously, there's still work to be done as a run defender, which it's kind of disheartening so far in that regard, only because he has been a good run defender at his time in LA when he's healthy. I don't know if it's just different calls or different tendencies with this defense, or if it's really just shaking off the rust and maybe during the year he'll get better, which is kind of what I suspect will happen as long as he stays healthy, knock on wood. But yeah, this Patriots pass rush is no joke, man. And Chason might not be good to go for Sunday. Maybe Milton Williams isn't good to go for Sunday. Obviously, we can only hope that, because that would make things a little bit easier and less to deal with. But assuming they're both good to go, I mean, this is a Patriots team that isn't blitzing often. They're 18th in the league right now at a 24.6% blitz percentage. So, I mean, it's not like they're constantly sending the hounds, but they have the bodies to win before and the bodies to send extra pressure and really put you in hell. I know that they could show a bunch of different looks too and try to get you off your guard, simulated pressures to try and kind of disguise it a bit, send some linebackers through the gaps and create hell. So this is a test for this Bills offensive line, but one that I feel like, if I had to say if I was comfortable with them being able to handle the D-line, I think they could, obviously. I just think we have a really stout offensive line, and it makes me feel a lot better about most of these matchups we face because, listen, every defensive line at some point in the game is going to have its wins. The Saints had them this past Sunday. That's just the nature of the game. But if you get me Spencer Brown back healthy to go back with Cybo, I just feel like, again, apart from the ground and pound element, which I do think the Bills will be able to pull off, I just trust them enough in pass pro to keep Josh Clean to get the ball out of his hands in maybe like 2.5 seconds, which I think is more than enough time for him to find somebody. And then it's really going to put some stress on the second level coverage to be able to handle guys like Shakir, Palmer, or Dalton Kincaid, who I think is going to have a big game. I think that's probably one of my biggest matchups to watch out for. You bring up Joey Bosa, and I want to bring this up too. We'll probably see him against Will Campbell a lot in this game. Will Campbell has been playing exceptionally to start his career. I mean, top 5 pick. You kind of hoped he would. People were worried about his arms. I think we got a little too obsessed with his arms. The kid is playing great ball. He's pass protecting really well. He's doing his best in the running game. Again, that'll develop over time. That's a big matchup because if Joey Bosa, an experienced pass rusher, can't really get anything going against a rookie tackle, I mean, that's not really good for the confidence, but also that's a big pain point when you talk about being able to affect Drake May in the pocket, because all of a sudden, your best pass rusher is completely neutralized on the left side. If Greg Rousseau, who is playing a little bit banged up, according to many people, can't really get anything going either, you're asking your interior to get a lot done. And if Ed Oliver's not playing, then it's like, all right, Deion Walker, Daquan Jones, what have you got for us? But again, I think the Pats aren't going to really hold the ball much. I think a lot of their long ball holds will probably come from play action and probably trying to stress the field vertically when they can to one of their tight ends, one of the highest 12 personnel teams in the league, most effective. I mean, that's going to be a very big matchup for me. If Joey Bosa can get his wins on that side and be consistent, create disruption, I do think that's going to put the Patriots in a bit of a bind because, again, the rest of their offensive line isn't fully gelled yet. I don't want to call it bad. It's definitely better than last year. But Joey Bosa being able to win that matchup would just put infinitely more stress on them. And I think it would ruin a lot of anything they really want to do when it comes to long form concepts down the field. I wanted to pull this up because I just brought up the tight end usage for them, though. So the Patriots right now, I mean, I think a big thing for them really stems from how they're using their tight ends. Actually, Adam, I'm getting too ahead of myself because I want to talk about defense in a second. Anything else you have on this Bills offense versus this Patriots defense before we move on? I do this all the time. I get way too carried away.
No, I think, the only thing I'd say, you mentioned that the Patriots only have about a 20%, blitz rate, but this would be a hell of a good week for them to break tendency, especially if for some reason Spencer Brown can't go and he's not ready. You saw the Saints put out there, exactly what you can do to try to get some pressure on that right side of the line when Spencer Brown is not in there. And, with the type of guys that they have, with the guys that might be missing, it sure would be a good week to try to bring some pressure, especially if they can kind of focus them as run blitzes with, how high or how often the Bills run on those early downs, that could end up, working as pass pressures if they do decide to drop back. So, that's one thing I'd be looking out for. I have a feeling that the blitz rate is going to be, higher than normal for New England, at least early on.
Yeah, and the Bills are only 2 spots up on the Patriots as we pivot over to defense full time now, because I kind of already spoiled some of my defensive talk. I write these topics down where I'm like, we're gonna start with offense, and then go defense, and it just goes all over. So that's my bad.
We just roll. Hey, we're free flowing, man. It's all good.
Free flowing. I love it. Just like water, man. Be water. But
that's right. That's right.
Talking about blitz rates, the Bills are only 2 spots ahead at 16th in the league, but these two teams sit right next to each other in terms of total quarterback pressure percentage. Bills are 12th in the league at 36.1, and the Patriots are below them at 35.5. Not a stark difference. They're not sending as much pressure. They really try to mix in extra bodies with, again, simulated pressures, creeper pressures, try to keep you guessing. I would really like to see them ramp up their blitz percentage and just put stress on May. The only concern I have is, and this is kind of my biggest concern for the defense in general in this game, May's legs. I mean, I think if you could keep May in the pocket, he's still going to get his wins. He's still going to get decisive throws. We'll talk about the tight ends in a second, but May's legs have been able to sustain. And when you talk about his success on third down, there is a part of it that comes from his athleticism to get out of the pocket. They've struggled in this regard. They struggled with it last week against Spencer Rattler. I do wonder if they try to dedicate a spy to May. Again, if they try to make it Bernard, if it's Milano, whoever it may have to be, to just keep him contained in the pocket, because they've been able to, again, get into these third and long situations, to be able to hold teams into that spot, but then they get punched in the mouth on a third and long. And a part of it last week came from Spencer Rattler being able to run, break containing, just get into the open field for an explosive run. That can't happen this week, because that's just simply not a world you can live in. You have to be able to stifle all momentum for this team, especially one that seems to not be able to get it going consistently on the ground. You have to take away the other component, which is Drake May's rushing ability, which has been what they've leaned on to kind of galvanize their rushing attack at points this year. So, I mean, that to me is a huge matchup, and I think that's going to stem from sending pressure, putting them in third and very long situations, the ability to get those havoc plays on early downs and put them in a really big, stressful situation, but also dedicating someone to him, not missing the tackle and being able to take him down in the open field. That's everything, man, because we've gotten to watch Josh Allen do it for so long, and we're so used to it. That drives defensive coordinators crazy. We're spoiled, but the Patriots have a guy that can do this now. This isn't a statue in the pocket. This kid is athletic. He can move. They have to be able to contain him. If they can't, expect a big day on the ground for May and maybe even their rushing attack with annoyingly sustained drives that are going to lead to points. Because if you can't get him to, if you can't stop that, it's going to be a long day for you on the ground. But Adam, I'll turn it back to you. What do you got?
And it's not going to be just scrambles. There's going to be, with the amount of play action that they mix in there, there's going to be, I'm sure, bootlegs. There'll be all kinds of different annoying ways that they're going to try to, get him, utilize his legs as a weapon as part of that game. And the good news is that the Bills know it's a problem. Every time that they've had something that they've struggled on over the last, in the Sean McDermott era, when you get through the earlier games of the season, you see them working on it. For example, with the young players, gap integrity, right? Something that's come up quite a bit as of late. And what did we see in video from the practice field this week? Did you see my Michael Scott meme that I shared with TJ Sanders? He was out there. He was out there anyways. They were working on gap integrity, and TJ was just practicing keeping his leverage onto the the left side onto his gap, and the coaches are just screaming gap integrity at him, and just trying to get him to remember, like, hey, this is something to constantly be thinking about this, be cognizant of this. Remember, this is where you need to be when do your 1 of 11th when you're out there on the field, and so going into a game against a QB with some strengths that has been a weakness for them so far, it's a hell of an opportunity. It's a spot to see, okay, have the things that we've been working on, been helping us improve. Drake May will be a good test for that. On the, the other thing that'll be challenging about it, though, is that through their play action game, we talked about those tight ends, Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry, right?
Yeah.
Their tight end target rate is the third highest in the league on first down. Drake May throws to his tight ends 36.4% of his pass attempts. So more than a third on first down, he's throwing to the tight end. The Bills are not that far behind that. Josh Allen 7th at 30%. But, the other thing that's scary about that is the Patriots, their yards per attempt when they're throwing to their tight ends, 9.5. They're getting the ball down the field.
Dude.
They're getting the ball down the field when they're throwing to their tight ends. They've also got 3 touchdowns. The Bills have 4. The Bills yards per attempt when they're throwing to the tight ends, 9.1. So the Patriots are very, very good at getting the ball to Hooper and Henry and especially on early downs out of play action. And, that's going to be a thing to be concerned about and a thing to watch. Combined with May's legs, that's one of the reasons that he's been so dangerous this year.
Yeah, their tight ends have been a menace. Hunter Henry has been a very consistent player for New England while he's been there, but this year it seems like it's the coming out party for him again. Now that you have Drake May taking that developing leap in year 2, if you want to call it that, Hunter Henry has definitely reaped the benefits and has been a steady presence for them. I will say this too. I looked it up earlier, just going off personnel rates. Their 12P rate, they are 6th in it total, and they're 11th in total EPA generated in 12 personnel. So that's not a slouching offense. That's not an offense that struggles. That is an offense that's going to have 2 tight ends on the field often and will be a test for the linebacking core. And it's very big to have Matt Milano back in this game for that exact reason, because I think Matt Milano has typically been able to have success when it comes to just second level coverage against tight ends. I think, again, while I respect Austin Hooper and I respect Hunter Henry, I do think Matt Milano, as long as he is healthy, is capable of covering, and he's going to have to. He's going to be tested in that regard. But really, the play action rate and the ability to ball fake and being able to get those tight ends in space, that's been the Patriots' bread and butter, in addition to other things. And you have to be ready for it because, again, I think that's really what they rely on at times to just galvanize their offense and get going. And when you talk about pieces that we haven't even talked about yet, like Stephon Diggs or Kayshon Boutte or Kyle Williams or even Travion Henderson as a pass catcher, selling your soul to defend the tight end and then letting these guys run wild is not going to cut it. It has to be sound. But I do think being able to take away the tight ends in an effective way that doesn't involve totally altering your game plan for them and reducing their effectiveness will allow you to contain the receiving core a little bit. And it's going to be a challenge for them. I mean, I have been really impressed with May and the way he's targeted them and the accuracy he's thrown.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the things, I've been trying to do some deeper research with Eric on kind of like a quarter season review, comparing the Bills' tendencies and some of the data from this season to, what their year as a whole looked like last year. And, the talk about the run game, one of the things that is really standing out is the amount of first downs per rush, the amount of, now that I have some access to some of the deeper next gen stats, thankfully, I can look at things like the average time to tackle from snap on a rush play. Bills are 5th worst in the NFL, 4.6 seconds from the start of the rush to completing the tackle. But they're the 9th fastest when defending the pass. They have the 4th shortest average yards gained per tackle on pass plays. But they are the worst team in the league in yards gained per rush at 4.4. So it seems like, almost like, the data is kind of screaming the Bills are intentionally saying, I don't care if you want to run. And I know that we've seen this a little bit in the past, the Bills kind of being more of I care more about stopping the pass than the run. But it seems to be even more heavily focused that way this season compared to what we've seen in the past, which in some ways is pretty curious because, some of their personnel decisions don't necessarily suggest that's the case. They've been running a significantly higher rate of 3 tight end sets on defense, right? They've been trying to find ways to adjust a little bit more to this kind of, transition phase of the NFL where the rushing attack is being utilized more. But it's almost like they're saying, you go ahead, because I don't think you're going to be able to rush better than us over the course of a half, 3 quarters, and eventually we are going to pull away. But what you're not going to do, because we are built more to beat you on the ground, what you're not going to do is throw the ball over us. And so when we're talking about covering these tight ends, and taking away the strength of the Patriots, which is throwing the ball. Because let's be honest, the use of 12 personnel for New England is entirely mostly for the pass game, right? Like Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry, I mean, they're not terrible, but they're not guys that you think about as prolific blocking tight ends, right? So it's all about the pass game. And if the Bills sit back and defend that, and again, go into a game trying to, all you need when you're stopping the rush is to win one series. Where that happens up and down the field is a little bit less important. So I think there's a little bit of merit to at least the way they're playing early on, especially without a fully formed offense and a fully formed defense. We'll just have to see how well it goes. And if they continue to kind of lean into that identity defensively on Sunday.
Yeah, and also containing the explosives, I think, is a big thing they have to emphasize in this game, because I love that point. That was so well said. Really, really insightful. And I mean, for them, I think the biggest issue had been, while they are, mitigating the passing attack a bit, they are still giving up heavy yardage and explosives. But if they can just generate those negative plays more often, I think they're going to be in a better spot when you talk about defending Drake May and this entire offense. Again, the 12 personnel component scares me. The receiving core scares me a little bit if that 12P component is successful in this game. But it's been very odd to watch teams kind of run the ball at will against them. And then you look at the final scores and you're like, like this felt way worse than it actually ended up being. And that's kind of what they live in, because I think they just feel that confident. And also, again, Eric has talked about this a lot, not showing their hands schematically on both sides of the ball, playing something, if you want to call it vanilla, but really it's just spamming reliable concepts that they know are going to work, and then pulling out the bag if they need it. I feel like on defense, there was some really interesting things that I saw them throw at the Saints, but only here and there. They played a lot of single high in that game. They played a lot of basic man coverage. They didn't really send a lot of extra bodies, and they were just like, go ahead, throw the ball. Because I saw this comment earlier from Swin, and he wasn't wrong here, where he said Spencer Rattler moved the ball at ease against the Bills. They were moving the ball. It just, they weren't finishing. And that's kind of what Sean McDermott wants to do. And it's kind of why I say this defense is infuriating to watch, because again, you talk about the third down conversions, you talk about the sustained drives, but ultimately they make the plays they need to make when they need to make them. Like it's a turnover at a timely event where it's almost like they sit up in their gamer chair and they just all of a sudden make a play. And I think what that really stems from is, again, we just don't think you're going to be able to sustain drives like this the entire game, and we're waiting for you to make a mistake. The only concern I have, and I feel like this might be shared, and I feel like we might see a little bit more creativity on defense, is that this is not the same team as the Saints, and that you might actually have to throw a little bit more of your kitchen sink at them schematically. That's kind of what I'm interested to say.
Yeah, and it's a divisional game. I mean, the questions all week that the players were getting from the media was about, why the Bills take divisional games so seriously and how that tone is set. And, I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was Deion Dawkins who mentioned that the tone is set from the, right immediately when the last season ends. They don't wait until training camp to talk about division games. They're talking about them in OTAs. They're talking about them in minicamp. They're talking about division games all the time. And if we're being honest, which game out of the 4 they've played so far do we feel like the Bills have kind of unveiled more of their exotic stuff? It was against the Jets, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like these are the games that they save that little bit extra. The division games, there's, your opponents know you better. That's also when you got to kind of buck from tendencies a little bit. And the rest of the games, those are your opportunities to set them. And, depending on how skilled your staff is, some NFL teams really do take advantage of the opportunity to, be a little bit more vanilla in the games that they're able to, and then, be a little bit more exotic in the games that are, more important. Because let's be honest, every game's important, but divisional games are the most important. That's your easiest ticket into the playoffs, winning your division, and that's the focus. That's at least the starting point. Before you get later into the season.
And the one thing that you often hear teams when they match up with the Bills talk about, and what they talked about this week in their pressers in New England, was really how well the Bills are. I cannot get a clean sentence out tonight, folks, but how good the Bills are at disguising their coverages and mixing up their safeties and their DBs. And when you have a team that already knows you're doing that, you got to get a little bit more creative too, because they're probably sitting on the idea that, okay, here's the one high, and now they're going to put their other safety deep, and it's going to be 2 halves, and their corners are going to be in man. And it's like, let's try to throw some really exotic things out there. There's one thing I saw this past week that I don't know how many times I did it because my eyes were all over the field, but I did notice it where they had Trey White as the single high, which was
Yep.
like, oh, okay, so we can get weird if we want to, but we're just not doing it as much as we. And that was kind of like the comforting feeling of watching them play the Saints, which makes me feel better about this matchup in that regard. Is like you could very much tell they were limiting themselves on what they were showing and just trying to execute with some very basic things, not all the time, but like for most of the game. But then you see Trey White as a single high safety, and I'm like, oh God, like what are they planning for next week? And there was also moments where like after halftime, I see them in a cover 3. And I'm like, we weren't doing this at all during the first half. Now all of a sudden we pivoted to having 3 DBs deep, and they didn't read it correctly, and they got them right off the field on a 3 and out. So I just sit here kind of like, I don't underestimate any team, and I don't think it's ever as easy as just like we're holding back. But I do think they keep things in the bag, like a break glass in case of emergency. We got to put this out there because we haven't shown it all game, and we think this is going to give us some momentum. And I think in the case of this New England game, for their secondary, getting as creative as you can and showing them things that you haven't shown anyone yet, or at the very least shown very little of, is the biggest key to keeping that ball in May's hands and trying to let your pressure hit home if they decide to hold the ball. And the Bills can do it. Like this passing defense, it has very high metrics. I know a lot of that can be determined from how teams are running the ball on them, more limited passing opportunity, and the Bills getting off the field. But they are a good passing defense. Like they are right now. I think that the short plays can improve. They can improve how they fly to the ball. But I think coverage wise, they do a really nice job. It just has to come together. And I think in this game with more exotic looks, they can get that. And I hope to see it because this is the game you have to do it in a divisional game against a Patriots team that, listen, they're 2-2. We're 4-0. I know people treat it like it's miles apart. That is not miles apart at all. We're early on in the year. It's a 2-game lead. Like you want to pad this down and have as much cushion as possible against any divisional opponent, especially one like the Patriots that I think is only going to get better as the year goes on. I'm really excited for it. It's definitely one of the most anticipated matchups for me on the schedule, just given how they've performed. If they were 0-4, I'd probably still feel in this way, but a little less. But this is a team that's feisty. They have a lot to prove. And I just want to pull up their stats at them too, because I didn't even do that yet. But when we're talking Pat's offense in general this year, we got them at 9th in EPA per play total. They're 4th in passing EPA, but 29th in rushing EPA. So we talked about the tight ends, 12 personnel, how they're going to throw the ball. Again, I think it'll be a nice hybrid of play action for the deeper drops, deeper drives, deeper route concepts, and then just a lot of quick hitters to guys like Stephon Diggs out of the slot, maybe Butte out of the on the boundary, and then their tight ends. But this rushing offense outside of Drake May's legs has not come through for them the way they had hoped. And I think a part of it, again, is their offensive line still meshing together and hasn't been stable enough to prevent things from being disrupted. But also, again, just like weird moments and miscues from their rushing offense, like fumbles and bad vision. Like even Travion Henderson struggling as a pass blocker, which was like what he was known for coming out of college. Like little factors that have just kind of kept them from really realizing their potential. What's your look on their rushing attack? I mean, specifically, what are you watching out for?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's been pretty bad so far. They're a sub 30% success rate in rushing. I think it was like 29% and change. And for those who don't know, success rate measures how often a play results in a positive EPA. Now, on first and second down, on first down, you got to gain 8 yards for a play to be considered a success. But once you get into second and third, depending on how many yards you have to go, that gets much, much shorter, and so to only be at, 29% success rate on the rush minus 0.313 EPA per attempt. So they are, literally every 3 times they rush the ball, they essentially are taking a point off the board, which is pretty huge. So, what I'm going to be looking out for, honestly, is the same things that we talked about, which is, can the Bills continue to play the style defense that they want to play, prioritizing defending the pass, and have a higher rate of success at, stopping these runs sooner, not letting them develop downfield, not letting them develop into missed tackles, not letting them, run through the center of the line of scrimmage with a lot of speed to make it more difficult on your linebackers and defensive backs to complete those tackles. Because, if they can do that, they're really, really going to be in a good spot, especially if the offense is able to move the ball in the early going.
Yeah, and looking at their last game too, because I was very interested when I saw the lopsided score. A lot of it had to do with game script, so I'm not trying to knock on them because I understand there was probably no real reason to have a high volume game. But even then, leading rusher was Ramondre Stevenson at 38 yards on 9 carries. They had Travion Henderson at 7 carries, 32 yards. And what I wonder is, how much does that dynamic change in this game, if at all? Are they still going with this 50-50 backfield split? Because I got to be honest, I think the biggest thing hampering them is that split and lack of commitment to a true identity with a rusher. I know Ramondre Stevenson has been there for years, but I feel like each season we've kind of seen what his ceiling is as a ball carrier, which is a good running back, but not this upper echelon elite guy and a guy that has trouble securing the football. Travion Henderson, they take him in the second round. He's a rookie. He's still figuring it out. But to me, for someone to get taken so high and not get the brunt of the snap share is kind of interesting to me. Maybe that increases this week in a divisional game where they've seen an even amount of split in games past because they want to kind of quote unquote unleash him against Buffalo. And that changes to become something more like 70% of the total snaps. And they're giving him 70% of the total carries. Like, this is a really talented player. I feel like they're almost hampering themselves by not really giving him the rock a bit more. And that has to be earned, I understand. But the explosive nature of this player is there. I believe in it. I know it can come from him. So I just wonder if that's kind of a sneaky storyline, is more Travion Henderson for the Patriots this upcoming week and it being effective because maybe the game plan wasn't really set out to really prevent him and not really sure of his tendencies yet.
Well, I mean, the thing about Vrabel is that he's been a thorn in the Bills' side for a long time. He put up some very tough games against the Buffalo Bills as the coach of the Tennessee Titans, and I have got a lot of respect for the way that he runs the franchise. And so, if he feels that that's going to be the ticket to being more successful on the ground, I'm sure that that's what they're gonna lean on. And Stevenson, like you said, he's getting a little bit up there, a little bit more in age. He's always had some ball security issues. I suppose game script might have a little bit something to do with it as well in terms of which direction that they're going to go, because, if they got to drop back and pass more, if he's still struggling, with pass blocking, then, it might make more sense to have kind of a little bit more of a savvy vet out in the field, especially if the offensive line as a whole is struggling to begin with. But, everything I've seen in terms of comments that I've seen from, some of the media that cover the New England Patriots, it's being talked about. The run game is what's being talked about. And they have been saying in the media, that, yeah, they know what Buffalo has not been able to do, which has been, stop the run. And it seems like they know that their ticket to being successful this week is going to be making sure that they have an ability to do so. And I don't know if that signals more of, just a focus on fixing a weakness that, they need to develop as their season goes along, or if it's a little bit of a admission that, on film, teams are seeing a team, or opponents are seeing the Bills as a team who, once again, is prioritizing stopping the pass and saying, yeah, try to run on us, because we're going to do it to you. And they know that they're going to have to be successful if they want to stay in the game.
And furthermore, it'll speak a lot of volumes of a Patriots rushing attack if they can't really generate much on the ground consistently, if the Bills are selling out in pass defense either. So that'll be interesting to watch, because if the Bills clean up the gap integrity issues, some of the tackling woes, it can't all be fixed overnight. And I'm not expecting that. But even just a marginal improvement from where they were last week, I think that could be a difference maker in this game, because again, we're seeing a Patriots offense that has been able to have success without the relief of a stable rushing attack. But again, against worse competition, I feel like the Buffalo Bills have an opportunity to just, again, fortify the rush defense without compromising how they sell out in coverage. And all of a sudden, you might end up in a much more advantageous position on the field where you're in third and long more consistently. There really isn't any threat of someone out of the backfield, whether it's a screen or a tunnel screen or something into the swing game or anything like that. And I think that's where they want to be. That's the world they want to live in. They want to put stress on them any way they can and just get them into true passing situations, which I think this Bills team can have success against them. And we will just have to see. I'm really excited to watch it. I think that is a very big part of this matchup, is really ground game. is the Patriots rushing offense just not clicking yet and they start this week and the Bills rushing defense has a lot of concerns? Or is it the flip side? Does the Bills rushing defense clean these components up and all of a sudden, because they maintain their integrity and they're not getting pushed around, it puts a lot more strain on this Pats offense in terms of their game plan and what they were prepared to do versus now what they have to do? And does that in turn reflect poorly on the Patriots passing offense? Does that put them in more of a situation where they have to air the ball out more and some of those metrics come down because they have to air it out more and they get exploited? Or are they really just that freaking good? Which I think this is probably more of the truth. Are they really just that good and they can get the ball through the air if they need to? Again, I will not sleep on Drake May. I will not sleep on this team in general, but it is a matchup I'm interested to watch out for. And I think Bills fans should keep an eye on it too. Adam, anything else on defense before we get to the final topic of tonight's show?
No, let's do it. Let's get on. Get on the last segment here.
Yeah, I'm looking at my notes. I'm like, oh wow, we actually talked about everything. Go us. So
yeah,
special teams has not been that special for the Buffalo Bills. It's been kind of underwhelming in terms of DVOA. They are sitting at 24th, and last week they were sitting at 24th. Now, this was interesting about the Patriots, and it's just such an early season thing. Patriots DVOA on special teams last week was in the 20s. I believe it was as low as 26th. This week they're 10th. So they had a very big improvement. And again, 1 week, Carolina Panthers team, very much struggling. It can inflate the metrics a bit, but there's something to be said for the fact that the Bills also went up against a not even just bottom tier, like the worst special teams unit in the league by DVOA last week, and didn't improve at all. And if you watched their performance, I mean, the kick coverage hasn't been great. The returns have been fine here and there, but they just really haven't had crazy amounts of success in their special teams yet. And I think a part of that has to do with, again, new coach, new strategy, still learning how to adjust to the new kickoff rules, a lot of different layers to this that I think might lead to some less than desirable results. But 24th is still not good. It needs to be better, and it needs to be better this week, because I'll tell you one thing, Mike Vrabel teams, they play with their hair on fire in all three phases, including special teams. You need to improve in this regard this game, and I think it has to start with their kicking coverage. So what do you think about that, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about special teams is that it becomes extremely important, obviously, when, you're playing light competition, when you're playing teams that are better than you. The one thing that's a beautiful thing about having Josh Allen and the roster that this team has is that, you have the ability to have a little bit more of grace while you're trying to deal with all of the growing pains that come with, like you said, having a new special teams coach and Chris Tabor, having so many players in and out of the lineup, really trying to figure out their identity there, and then also turnover of players. There were some key players, obviously, who played big roles on special teams last year who are no longer here. One of them that we're going to see this week, this Sunday, in Mac Hollins, right? So to me, the most important thing is, some of the positives I've seen is that they've been able to stay resilient in at least, the plays that are most important about putting points on the board, which is the field goal kicking. Even with the turnover of punters, changing holders, that side of things has been extremely consistent. Even with the turnover that they've had there. So I'm always nervous when a team is. The thing that scares me the most about special teams is, do the teams that recognize the issues that you're having there find ways to take advantage? How many block kicks have we seen in the league this year? There've been a ton, right? I don't know if we've seen any fake punts yet in the league this year. I can't recall. Have you seen any yet?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
These are the things
it probably wasn't memorable if they did.
Yeah, right. Exactly. well, these are the things I worry about when a team is playing a team that really doesn't have anything to lose and everything to gain. These are the things that I'd be looking out for, because when a team is kind of reeling a little bit on special teams and trying to figure out their identity, that's when someone comes in with a hammer and whacks you over the head with a play like that. So to me, with how many players they have out, with how much development there is, new coach and everything else, it's just don't let it beat you, on Sunday. Don't let it be the reason that you lose. And like I said, to reiterate, the positive thing in all this is that they're making their kicks when they need to make them.
Yeah.
And as long as they continue to do that and don't let any big plays kind of kill them, they can keep working at it.
Yeah, the field goal component has been great. Matt Prater has been everything you've asked of him in the situation he's in, and I feel really good about him in these moments. I mean, one shank kick against Miami, but apart from that, he's been spotless. So I'm very thankful for that performance. But I just think it needs to improve all the more after last week because I think a big part of not even just the Saints, but what teams can do to this Bills defense, if you're talking about concern over how they're sustaining drives and how they're moving the ball, the starting field position has to get better. That's really where it comes from on both sides. And when I say that, I mean, our kick coverage has to stop letting teams essentially get a touchback on their returns. And our units, when it comes to returning, can't end up in situations where they're starting from the 10 or even the 15. I think a big part of what helped the Saints last week gain momentum on defense was in part penalties from the Bills side, which you could argue some had merit, some didn't, but those are way more consequential when you're on your own side of the field, pinned back deep. And I think the Bills saw that, and it's what led to a lot of stalled drives on offense because they were playing from so far deep, had a 10 or 5-yard penalty, pushed them back more. And there really wasn't much you can do on offense to overcome that deficit without Josh Allen trying to make a play, which he did attempt and subsequently turned the ball over. Granted, it was a really nice play from Senker. Yeah. I think that that's where you need to win this week is win in the field position game, because I think if you want to talk about the things we just did about the Bills defense approaching this Patriots offense, as far as Mitch Wishnowsky, who's coming in for the first time and punting in Buffalo for the first time, you have to be able to pin these guys deep, because I think what you'll wind up doing is further eliminating an already struggling rushing attack from ever having the opportunity to prove itself, but putting, again, more strain on Drake May to make a mistake, have to execute perfectly. When you're pinned that far deep on your field, you're talking about now everything has to be spotless, not even just because we have to sustain the drive and there's way more field to cover, but because an errant pass is far more consequential starting from your own 15 than it is on the opposite side. Obviously, you don't want to turn the ball over in general, but if I throw an interception from my own 10, you're starting in field goal range. You're starting borderline goal line. So, I mean, that matters a ton. And I think the Bills just have to improve in this regard, especially against the Patriots team that, again, they're coming into Buffalo with full eyes on trying to take you down. I know these two teams might be at different stages in their respective franchises' tenures, but this is a team that has all the confidence in the world that they can come in and take you down from your crown. Special teams has to tighten up. The tackling has to be better. The punt coverage has to be better. The returns have to be better. They have to start in better field position, because a big part of it too is for the Bills side on offense, sustaining drives, you get a lot better opportunity to do it when you're starting in better field position as well. And to run the ball and to be a threat when you're running, and to not have defenses sell out as easily because they're not pinned back at the goal line, starting from your 35 and being able to utilize James Cook from there and open up your playbook a bit more and prevent them from doing theirs all the same in your opposite side of your special teams. That matters so much, and they have to be better at it. So, I mean, watching that Saints game, it was really disappointing. I thought they would have a much better game. They didn't. They didn't improve at all. This has to be the week to do it, because a divisional game, special teams matters a ton. Don't let them get any momentum. This is how you could start it. That's really all I have to say about it. Anything else you want to add, Adam, before we sign off?
No, that's that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the only other thing I'd say is that, just kind of in looking at the average starting field position, if you look league wide since the year 2000, the 2025 season has the 7th highest average starting field position on average, which is right around 31 and change, 31-yard line. The Bills this season so far averaging 29.4. So that's why, at least, for me, and I've heard Aaron say this before too, to me, special teams, it's always about avoiding the big play. Make the kicks, avoid the big plays that are detrimental to you. And when you got Josh Allen back there, if your starting field position on average is 2 yards shy of, where everyone else is starting, I think you're going to be all right.
Yeah, it's not an end-all be-all by any stretch. They could still overcome. They did overcome it. You know what I mean? They played in this game that I'm talking about a 11-point win. But, like, if we're talking about a team where you want them to be buttoned up in a big matchup, this is just an area of improvement I see them really needing to take the lead on, and I hope they can in this game. But, again, 2 yards. Josh Allen can make it happen. I don't have any doubt about that. But there's a lot of pressure on him to do it in that spot. And I like easy ball. I like watching them have fun. I like watching them feel at peace with themselves when they run these really fun physical concepts. So I just want to close it off, Adam, with just one final question for you, and that's offense, defense, special teams, whatever you want to prioritize. Your biggest matchups, players, units. I mean, what are you watching out for as we head into Sunday?
I'm going to be watching the Bills DBs. I'm going to be watching the DBs versus Drake May. I just think the way that he's been throwing the ball, watching his vision in particular, some of the plays that I've been seeing the all 22 guys share about the things that May is seeing on the field and the throws that he's delivering to places that most quarterbacks, really, even some that are technically not open. But he's got the vision and the arm talent to sling it into areas that, most guys wouldn't dare go. That's what I'm going to be paying attention to. I always really love, obviously the most fun games are when you're watching the best signal callers back there doing their thing. And I think this game is really going to be the start of a long run of very enjoyable games between Drake May and Josh Allen. And, I just hope our defensive backs are up to the task. So that's what I'm going to be watching.
Yeah, definitely worth watching, and I agree. It's a tough challenge for them against an ascending quarterback that has made high-level throws very early on in his career. We're in for years of pain in the ass matchups, folks. Like that's just what this is. Like he's great. I never disliked the player. I never disliked him. I just hate where he is. That's kind of what it is for me. And you're putting your DBs in a lot of stress too, because you talked about some of the injuries before. Dorian Strong is another player that they've already ruled out, so you're likely seeing maybe one of Jamarcus Ingram or Dane Jackson take the mantle here. Trey White hasn't been bad at all. I think he's been fine, but you're still testing him vertically. You're talking about Christian Benford, who's on something of a down year, although I would argue it's kind of a product of the rest of the secondary. And again, putting him in a bit more conflict if he doesn't have safety help over the top or the safety help can't get there on time. I think that's been getting better each week, though. I think they're becoming more stabilized in the secondary, especially with how each week it seems Cole Bishop is improving and kind of playing more soundly. And I think that can get better there in pass coverage. So that is a very interesting matchup. And I guess for me, when I talk offense, it's really whatever receiver, Christian Gonzalez isn't shadowing. Because again, the Carlton Davis is another equally as impressive DB. He's still very talented. He's still going to be a very difficult matchup in man or zone. So I want to see if they can exploit either one of those corners. If Gonzalez isn't 100% healthy, can they exploit him? It's going to be a tough task. It is. Their corners are not the problem. I think it's really their safeties that kind of hamper them down. So how can you exploit that if it can't be the cornerbacks? Are you talking about Khalil Shakir or Dalton Kincaid out of 13 personnel where you match him up as a bit of a receiver across the field and just try to get him in space? That's really what I'll be watching out for on offense. And then defense, I mentioned it before, it's Joey Bosa against Will Campbell. That's probably my biggest matchup just because I think the net positive of Joey Bosa having success in that matchup, if he is matched up with Will Campbell often in this game, which I suspect he would be, that to me is going to be huge because, again, I just think that creates a chain effect for the rest of the Patriots offense. If you cannot feel comfortable behind your left side for a righty quarterback, Joey Bosa's creating pressure. It puts pressure on you to now have to kind of drive yourself out or maybe force yourself to rush or throw and make a play a little bit faster. There really is a lot here that I think the Bills could take advantage of if they have this matchup in hand. And if they don't, how do you win in other ways? That will be tested immediately. Is it Deion Walker? Are you going to put him in more pass rush situations? Are they going to end up in those pass rush situations because of this rushing attack, and can it sustain? Is Daquan Jones going to have a big game because he seemed to have improved himself this year? Is Greg Rousseau going to emerge? I think you have more questions than answers if Joey Bosa's matchup doesn't go well. And I think if they end up in more pass rush situations, he's got to win against a very talented rookie tackle who will be in this league for a long time. But Adam, I'm excited. It's going to be a hell of a game. People might be sleeping on him, but I'm not. 8.5 feels fair. I think it should be something a bit more shallow, but I'm hoping for a Bills win, and I think they can do it. I still think it's a Patriot team that's early on in its development curve. I think they're going to get their punches on the Bills, but I think this Sunday, the hostile environment will lead them to miscues. I think the fumbling issue will rear its ugly head because the Bills generate these turnovers.
Yep.
And I think they'll take advantage of that. I think it should be a game they win, but anything can happen, and I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'll give you one more parting stat before we leave. How's that sound?
I love it.
When
as many parting stats as you want to give me, Adam.
When the Bills target wide receivers, particular, they're ranked 7th in the league in yards per attempt. The Patriots, 21st. I thought that was surprising with how good Drake May's numbers are. To me, that signals that if they're not throwing to the tight ends, it's a lot underneath.
Yeah.
It's not much downfield. But he's been successful at it. So it's going to be about coming downhill quick, locking them up, and I think at the end of the day, like you said, 8.5 points. I think they covered in this game on Sunday, but late. They cover late, and the game feels closer than maybe the final score shows. A little bit like the Saints game.
Yeah, maybe so. I fully suspect that. I would bet under. I just bet under because I'm a paranoid fan, but also because I just think this is going to be a divisional game. Divisional games are never lopsided. Well, retract that. They can be lopsided, but for the Bills, I think they're going to play him tight. I think it'll be a very competitive matchup. I actually just looked up Stephon Diggs specifically, his snap counts, and also where they're aligning him. And it's very similar. I mean, he's got 80 so far out wide and 61 in the slot. But I think his out wide snaps, as he gets healthier, will become a bit more threatening downfield. But even if they're not, having him as a healthy decoy is problematic. We've seen it in Buffalo and how they've employed him. I think a big thing for them is, again, sustaining drives and their third down conversions that if their rushing attack isn't going, they wind up in so often that they need those receivers to get open in quick space. Maybe it's a 3rd and 5, a 3rd and 6. Like guys like Diggs being able to be the decoy vert threat so you can have a guy like Pop Douglas or maybe Booty be one of those slot receivers that can get you a first down. I think that's probably why you're seeing that metric a bit. But I feel like this Patriots team does have the capacity to go downfield because I think Booty has emerged this year as a very viable deep threat. We know what Diggs can be when he's healthy. I just wonder if that's their game plan or if they decide not to test it because the Bills might be running a bit more, again, cover 3 or maybe cover 3 buzz or something along those lines where they try to just decoy it and bait him into making mistakes. So they're really just going to try and keep it short, sweet, above the sticks, chew clock, sustain drives, and see if they can win that way. So I'm excited. As a hell of a stat, Adam. You brought a ton of stats and you brought the juice tonight, man. It was awesome talking to you on here again. You're an awesome person. I appreciate the heck out of you for, again, the tickets, but also just being a really welcoming and fun, insightful presence in our space in Cover One and in the Bill space. And I want you, with the time you have here before we sign off, to tell the good people what you got going on, where they can find you, and anything else you'd like to share.
Yeah, guys. So you can find me on Twitter. That's kind of where I, think out loud is the way I describe it when I'm digging up stats. If I find something interesting, I'm just going to put it out there. My handle is at Adam Pencil, Pensel. That's how you spell my last name. So you can find me there. Otherwise, I'm in the Cover One Discord every now and then, sharing things. Excited about the Sabres because I love chasing my tail. We'll see how that goes this year. But we got a great channel of Sabres fans in there as well. So, give me a follow, say hello. If you ever have questions about anything, you want me to dig something up for you, shoot me a tweet, send me a message. Let's talk Bills football.
His last name's Pencil because he's so sharp, man. And you could see it here on our show tonight. This man brings the juice, brings the stats. And again, well worth your time. I've learned a lot from following Adam. The data is always on point, and I don't just say that because he's in Cover One. He's providing every metric you can find, good or bad, to really reflect how this Bills team is performing in all phases. So if you're someone who's trying to learn more, trying to find more data points to cite when you're arguing with other fans or just to know about how the team is doing, Adam is the guy to follow. He will give you plenty of information. It's well worth your time. And Adam, again, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. To all of you that are in the chat tonight, before you sign off, I need you to do me just a couple of favors. It's like this video on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. Share it with your Bills fan friends because it doesn't just help me. It doesn't just help Adam. It helps our whole network. It helps us all grow to get into the algorithm of more Bills fans that are like-minded, such as yourself, and want to find more content. So do that and help us out. Subscribe to the channel. We are over 100K strong and growing. We've been putting out content on every show, from the Air Raid Hour on Mondays, Disguised Coverage with Anthony on Tuesday, the Film Room, which I'm producing on Wednesday, Greg and Aaron going live on the C1 Buff podcast on Wednesday evenings, sometimes Thursdays, sometimes Tuesdays. Oftentimes, if it's not on a Wednesday, you could suspect Greg will be in a suit in a hotel in some random part of the country, but they are bringing the juice when they go live. It is a really good time to be a member of Cover One as well. If you are interested, check the description of this video. You can find the One Pass sign-up link. And for just 60 gold doubloons a year, you will have access to everything that we provide, including our premium Discord that has a ton of channels for you to check out and engage with our content creators, but also some access to some cool things such as our t-shirt that we have partnered with 26 Shirts to create. It's well worth your time. So if you've been on the fence about it, this is your sign to go do it. Sign up. My name is Joe DeRosa, and you can find me on Twitter/X at @show_DeRosa. While I'm not bringing as much data as Adam, I bring the memes and the vibes, and I'm just someone who just kind of really posts whatever. I don't really have much of an identity on there, but if you see a Machop holding a rock, that's me. So go check me out on Twitter, or not. It's totally fine too. Again, thank you guys so much. We'll be back next week with another episode, hopefully another victory recap. But for tonight, enjoy the rest of your Friday. Be responsible this weekend. Don't do anything dumb. It's fall. Why would you be stupid during fall? Just because it is fall doesn't mean you should fall in life. I don't know. I'm short circuiting. So I'm just going to hit the end stream button and tell you all good night. See you soon. And as always, go Bills. Take care, everybody.
Go Bills.